Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, May 24th of 2026. Now I have a pretty short message for you today, and I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks, and I thought, well, I'm going to journal on this because I've talked to several people who've had the same realization that every person, every soul in a human body has their own, not just journey, the way they walk through this world, but we all have our levels of awakening. We all have our own timelines we're walking on. And it's not our job to wake other people up. And what I have found interesting in some of the conversations I've had with people who have really been on this journey with me, uh, like on the same, pretty much the same timeline and trajectory, and we see the same things at the same time, is that it's interesting to watch people that you love as they go through their stages of awakening and then they kind of fall back to sleep. And this is not in any way discounting someone's journey, but it can be a touch bit frustrating until you just realize some things. So the very first note I wrote down, I actually wrote this in my phone. I was on a walk and I opened up the notes app and I wrote, time to let people come to their own conclusions in their own time and timeline. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take that idea and I'm just going to journal about it because I think this is it for me has been a cause of a little bit of angst, a little bit of like, you know, not just, it's not even like it's not even really angst at this point. It's like, I want people to see the same things that I'm seeing and to be able to talk about it. And I do have a very small group of people, a couple of relatives, one beautiful niece in particular, that I we can talk about anything. We're on the same page, the same wavelength, the same frequency. And there are other people too. Some are farther away. But I want to be able to say, wow, look at this that's happening and look at it from this perspective. And oh, let me see your perspective. I mean, I think we kind of crave that as awakening souls. So I'm just going to go through what I wrote in my journal this week and just see if any of this resonates with you, and maybe gives you a little bit of perspective as you're on your own journey through this amazing, amazing decade. This decade is just, it has not disappointed at all in this awakening journey of awareness and unity and unconditional love and just love, period. This decade has not disappointed. That's my perspective. So here's how I started the week. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to truly wake up and also what it means to let other people stay exactly where they are. Okay, what does that exactly mean? Okay, I can honestly say I've lived enough life now to know that when that this awakening journey, it's not a finish line. I wrote, it's not like a dramatic finish line. You don't all of a sudden go, oh, I'm awake and I'm aware and I see the world for what it is and I see all the systems and all the things that are broken, all the things that are changing, and I see that almost everything that we've been taught and programmed and all that, it's all a lie. It's not like a finish line. You're not you're not there. In fact, I don't think the finish line happens until we transition. And then it's going to be like, oh, hmm, right? Okay. It's not about proving that I see more than someone else. Okay. It's a lifelong journey. And it feels like there's layers and layers and layers. That's what I wrote. Layers and more layers and more layers. Okay. I think my awakening began when I was young. You know, uh, it definitely kicked off in 2020 a lot more hardcore, but I do believe it. And I believe it's because my dad did what he did with plant medicine, really took me and my siblings out of the medical model when we were very young. We never really spent any time there unless there was an emergency, unless, there was a broken bone or, even then, one of my sisters, when she was a teenager, uh, almost had her appendix burst, but because my parents they were just so out of the medical model, there were certain things that felt a little life endangering with the way that we grew up. In fact, that's a very famous story in our family. This particular sister, she's 5 years younger than me, and so when I was already out of the house because I got married very young, and this story has come up many, many, many times, and she's had a little bit of emotional healing to do from that, to do from that situation. But I believe that this guided all of me and my siblings on the path that we took as adults in the way we saw the world, the awakening process. And I think that's why what happened in 2020 was, uh, it was, it was so blatantly clear to me. Okay. So, I think it was because my dad thought the way he thought, and because he thought outside the box. And long before was it popular or acceptable to question anything in the medical system, he already did. And we were raised with that. It wasn't like he was bad. There's a lot more bad mouthing on these systems, especially the medical system now that I see. My dad never did that. He just simply opted out. And I think that alone is a lesson that we can just go, well, I don't need to badmouth it. I just don't need to partake in it on the level that many people do. Because I do believe that there's a part of the medical system that is important for us to partake in, like trauma care and emergency care. Like, this is an amazing, brilliant, beautiful time to be alive and to be able to take care of these bodies when we get hurt, when there's an accident. I mean, if we do all the other things that keep us healthy, the medical community, for what it does well, can really prolong our lives and save our lives in so many ways. So my dad, he trusted plants, he trusted nature, he trusted the intelligence of the body. And this was just the way he lived. What I believe he taught me is that he taught me to observe things on a deeper level, and not just blindly accept the authority because that's what we're told. That's what we're told is true. You just blindly accept it. This is one of the deepest things that I believe my dad, and my mom too. My mom was right there with him. And then I wrote this. He didn't realize that I would question the religious construct too, because we grew up in a very religious construct, and all of my siblings, except for one, have questioned that and have chosen a different belief system, a different timeline for that. And it was interesting. Back then, I didn't realize how unusual that perspective was. But now I do. For me, I was partially asleep. My life was good, at least it seemed good. And that was from my perspective at 2020. I was partially asleep. My life was good, at least it seemed good. Okay. I mean, looking back now, there was a lot of things, relationships and things that I just went along with that were really incongruent with my soul and my soul's journey. So there's a big piece of me that's super grateful for what happened in 2020. In fact, there's I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what this decade is bringing and ushering. Okay. It cracked something open that can never fully close again. I think that's what happened in 2020. It forced people to choose between fear and discernment. Um, we get to choose between comfort or questioning. It's comfortable not to question the systems and question what's really happening. It seems more comfortable there, right? I think instead of blindly following, it shows us that it shows that we really needed to truly think for ourselves. I remember clearly driving on that first day, the very first day, there was all the rumblings and all the things. Oh, there's a pandemic and all that stuff. And honestly, I remember so clearly when that happened. I think many of us do. This was a pivotal moment in humanity, right? But I remember thinking, oh, this is like SARS-CoV-1. And I remember that. I remember I was teaching a step class, probably, I don't know how many years, 10 years earlier, and the girl who taught a class right after mine, she came up to the stereo. We were changing, I was getting my music out and getting my microphone, and she was plugging her stuff in and getting ready for her class. And when she wasn't teaching classes, she was a nurse. And when I wasn't teaching classes, I was doing my herbal business. So I remember her just being in full panic about it. And I remember just listening and saying, hey, I think it's all going to be okay. That this is a cold. We need to be careful. We need all this stuff. But I remember clearly the day in 2020, like all of us do, when they were like, everybody needs to stay home. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, whatever. And I remember driving to my warehouse thinking, what the heck? Because there was nobody on the road. And I mean, it was surreal. Like I'm sure all of us remember, but I remember clearly driving on that first day. And then I remember this. Some people woke up quickly, right? Some didn't wake up at all, and some were in between. Now I think it's starting to become a lot more people are like, it's been, a slow awakening for many people, but I find myself in conversations with friends and with even with some relatives and even with, close people to me, that it's cracking open, and it's a slower awakening because now it feels so blatant to me. And I mean, it was blatant to me in the beginning, but uh, you know, it now is like, how can you not see it? What I find myself reflecting on the most as I'm here in 2026 is not just this whole awakening journey, but the relationships around it. Okay, that's what I wrote. All of the relationships around it. To say my life is startlingly different than it was in March of 2020 is a massive understatement. Massive. And then I wrote this. So here's what I've realized. I'm a mother to two grown men, both boys in their 40s. They are incredible men in their own right. I'm a grandmother. My grandchildren are almost 13. My grandson will be 13 next month. My granddaughter will be 15 in August. And that has, you know, been such a gift to be a grandmother. I run a successful generational herbal business that is somehow growing even more at this stage in my life. I just got chills as I said that, because um, it's not like I'm surprised. And I think when you put your heart and soul into something and you believe in it so strongly, you know that this is the mission you came down to serve in this particular lifetime. And it just stays, consistent and congruent with everything that I believe, the people I know get to help. It's interesting because I watched a little clip of someone who was lamenting the fact that many small companies that start off, like one was Burt's Bees, I think, and then even Humble Deodorant. Like there's these companies that have really clean ingredients, and then as people are searching for these clean ingredients and these clean products, they don't realize at some point that a lot of these companies get bought out by the big companies like Coca-Cola or Johnson & Johnson will buy some of these, and then they change. They change, and then because they're scaling. And I sat with this after I watched this little clip about this, and how it was discouraging for this person who was like, you think you're, not only supporting a small company or a company that has values that match yours, you find out later that they've sold out. And it was like, it made me even more determined to put in, in a will or in some type of a trust or whatever, that the company that I run, this generational beautiful herbal company, will stay as it is now. It made me even more determined to make sure that all of those things are in place when it's my turn to transition out of this lifetime. So I run a successful generational herbal company that is somehow growing even more at this stage in my life. And through all of this, I've realized something that's very humbling to me. Not everyone I love is going to see the world the same way I do. And I've found it can be very painful. And only painful if I let it be. But I've had my moments where it's like, oh, this is painful because this person that I really love, I would love to be able to, we all want to be on the same journey, especially when we feel like we're evolving in a beautiful way. And this is not in any egotistical, I'm better than you kind of a way. This, because when you see the world a certain way, everything changes and it just becomes so beautiful. So then I said it can be painful, especially when I feel that humanity is shifting so deeply beneath the surface. There's so many things that we just, unless you feel it on that level and then you see it and you opt out of all the things that distract us, um, you see that humanity is shifting so deeply. And then I wrote, especially when I can see and feel and watch all of the cracks in the old systems, the old narratives, and the old programming. I can see it, I can feel it, I'm watching it. And many of us are. It's it and then I kind of go, holy cow, oh my gosh, I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful that none of this stuff has to affect me in the way that it might have affected. Some of it just affects us because it's there, it's background noise, and we don't even realize, right? And then I wrote, especially when my intuition is screaming that we are living through a massive collective transformation. That's when I kind of feel um, like, oh my goodness, I really want others to see, right? Okay, I've wanted to shake people awake sometimes. I'm sure many of you have had that thought process. You know, I've wanted to say, how can you not see this? But I've realized that consciousness cannot be forced. That's what I wrote. You cannot force someone to become conscious, and you're not supposed to. We're not supposed to do that. Every soul has their own consciousness journey. Some will have multiple, many lifetimes, thousands maybe, right? And then I wrote this: people will wake up when their soul is ready. And sometimes it looks like it's asleep um, to, to me. And what's simply happening is another person is just having a different experience. Okay, that's all. They're not asleep. They're having their own experience, and it's just different. So that's why I always like to say it's not better. It's not, it's, and here's what I also believe, because I think the thing that I used to struggle with is that I would be like, how can you not see this? We all need to see this so we can wake up together and make sure that the systems that are trying to control us and take away our freedoms, and we got to make sure that doesn't happen. So that has been the cause of my own personal angst or wanting to shake people awake. It's like, because the choices you make by not seeing the things that some of us are seeing affect me too. That has probably been the biggest part of it. So I've also realized that awakening doesn't mean that I'm rejecting this whole 3D reality entirely. And I talked about that. That was the whole crux of or that was not the crux. That was the whole message of my video last week. We're here to experience this. It's like being in the Truman Show, except for you're aware that you are in this, and then you get to enjoy it, right? In fact, I think part of the lesson is learning how to stay present inside of this. I talked about this at length in last week's video. I still love all these things. I wrote a beautiful dinners with my family. I love laughing at silly cat videos. I have a sister she's recently gotten 2 cats a couple years ago, and they're so funny and hilarious. And sometimes with her daughters, we'll watch funny cat videos. I love hugging my grandchildren. I love building my business, especially a business that's rooted in healing. I love this. This is all part of the 3D world, but I love it. And it gives us, like, we're here to experience all of this, and we can't do it without this body. That's the most beautiful thing, right? I love gardening. I love pulling weeds, right? Music, sunsets, having real conversations. I love that. And I realized that this is what I wrote in big letters. This human life matters. We need to remember that. The mistake I see some people make on the spiritual path is that they become so obsessed with escaping the matrix, okay, that they disconnect from the beauty of everything that is here while we are alive. And they get so disconnected from that. And that is part of the beauty of awakening too. That's part of the beauty of the whole thing. You go through these layers of, you feel upset about all this stuff. I remember sitting in my backyard. It was probably the summer of 2020, maybe the middle of the summer. And it felt like the trees were purple and the sky was a weird, like, it just felt, I could feel the matrix, and it was not comfortable because I could not believe that everyone wasn't seeing what was happening. And then as I released all of that, now it's like being aware and seeing the beauty of this planet and all of our experiences. It just adds that vibrant layer. It adds all the colors become as vibrant as they get to be, right? So that is part of the beauty of waking up too. And maybe the deeper part of it is this. Here's 3 questions. Can we stay conscious without becoming bitter? Can we see clearly without becoming arrogant? Okay, that's important. And can we hold the truth without losing compassion? That is utterly important. That is absolutely important. We can't say just because you don't see the world the way I see it, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to be compassionate towards you. We cannot lose our soul's compassion, because that comes from the deepest part that makes us us. The divine spark of pure God consciousness that we are. That's what makes us, that's what adds the beautiful layer on top. So, but here's what I wrote, because the truth is this: some relationships naturally fall away during periods of awakening. Not with drama, not with hatred, but just naturally. Some people are committed to their timeline, their reality, and the frequencies that I no longer align with. Some people are just committed to that. And let's see, and I am not going to force myself to stay energetically entangled out of guilt. Okay, that is very, very important. I'm not going to just out of guilt force myself to stay energetically entangled in a relationship or in any situation. That has been one of the biggest things that's dropped in it for me the last couple of years. This, what I wrote here, is that helps no one. Doesn't help anyone, right? It's okay to gently release people. Sometimes it's not so gentle, even though I try. That's what I wrote. Okay. It helps no one. It's okay to release people gently. Sometimes it's not so gentle, even though I try. I've always tried. And then I realized this: it's not out of anger or self-righteousness, just love. It's easier said than done, especially when there's pushback or begging. Okay. I can appreciate, I can still bless someone and let them go. And I can appreciate where they are in their life. I can just appreciate it. And okay, that's all. Honestly, I think many people are quietly going through this right now. I don't think I'm the only one. In fact, I know for a fact I'm not the only one. And you might be one of those people, you know. Honestly, I think many people are quietly going through this right now. Their families are changing, their friendships are shifting, their marriages are evolving, and people are questioning everything that they once believed. It's a strange time to be alive, but then what I realize is this: it's a profoundly sacred one as well. It's very strange. It's a very strange time to be alive, but it's profoundly sacred. We chose to come at this time because maybe the most challenges were here. Maybe the strongest, most brilliant souls were like, let's go. Let's freaking go. Let's go down and do this. And when you remember that, and it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, or like right now, I have this massive goosebumps on both my arms, because that is a truth bomb that lands in my soul when I say that. Here we are. Let's do this. Let's freaking do this. Let's go. It's go time, right? Whew, okay. So it's a strange time to be alive, but also profoundly sacred. Humanity feels split. It feels split right now between fear and awakening, and between the old systems that are trying to do their thing and kind of collapsing, and something that's entirely new that's trying to be born. Okay. My job right now isn't to convince anyone else. It's not my job. My job is to simply be peace. That's my job. Think about what radiates out when you simply are peace. Okay? To stay grounded and to stay healthy, to stay awake without losing my humanity. That's my job. That's my job right now. Let's see. It's to be living proof that another way of being is possible. I just need to be a living proof of it. I don't need to convince anyone. I don't need to preach or any of that. I just need to be living proof that something else is possible. I don't claim to have all the answers. I never have. In fact, quite far from it, right? But I do know this. This is what I wrote at the very end of my week. The older I get, the less interested I am in fighting people about reality. I'm not interested in that anymore. And I want to have, conversations and connections as people are on their own journey, an awakening journey, and I can just be. I don't have to try to convince them of mine, right? And I am more interested in living my life more fully, more consciously, and most importantly right now, authentically. I want to just be authentic, right? And that right there feels like the real awakening to me. That is what feels real. So if you can relate to any of this, I would love to know what you think. This to me just feels like a really nice place to land as we are here at the very last week in May of 2026. This decade is going to continue to unfold a lot of really cool things. I think we might get some disclosure. We might, we might see some crazy cool things. I think we might have some rough things come in. Our monetary system is changing. We might have some blackouts might roll out to throw us off kilter. This is where we get to stay solid. Um, we get to stay prepared as well. And then we get to be there for other people and other humans as these crazy, strange times continue to unfold. So I'd love to know what you think about this. Where do you find yourself along this journey? Maybe you're right there with me. Maybe you're, a few further steps, many hundreds of thousands of steps ahead of me. And it's not a better than now. It's just a simple, where are you? Where does any of this land for you? But I hope you have a brilliant last week in May. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.